summer. There are 3 more, I think, plus our fundraiser. We have another program in this space on the drama in Colburn. Then we have our fundraiser in the Academy Memorial Building. If you're a member of the Society, you've probably already gotten a letter asking to be a sponsor for that, but regular tickets will go on sale soon. And then also in the Memorial Building, we have Major Bill Brown talking about music in the history of the town. Then in September, we have Stories and Stones, which my friend James is in charge of, always in the Masonic Cemetery. That's in, I think, the 3rd Saturday of September. And then finally, we'll have a program at Christmas time, whatever weekend it is that we have the various town festivities. So we'll be busy for the rest of the year, and we hope you can come to one or all of those things. Also, we're always looking for members. I'll say this again at the end, but there's a membership page. James has membership forms. We'll take, anything I said the last time we were here. I think I said we'd take Micronesian trade goods, which isn't quite true. We're always looking for new members, and the form's available if you would like one. So my subject today is local visual artists from George Winter to Warner Williams and beyond. I'd like to start off by thanking the library for the hospitality of having us here in this lovely, cool room. Jeff Kenny and the Academy's Museum for loans of some of these items, both personally and institutionally. Ann Duff for several things over there that I'm going to talk about later. Judith McKee Burns for her website on maxandcuckyhistory.castcracker.com. I and almost anyone who does historical work about the town finds oneself going back to look at what Judy has put on the web. And James Beckling Smith for a lot of help yesterday in getting all this set up and help all the way through the process of getting things run off and generally organized. So our first artist is George Winter. This character here. He's born in Portsmouth in England in 1809, so just down the road from where my own ancestors were born a couple of years before him. His father and 5 siblings moved to the U.S. to Cincinnati, and he went to live with his brother in London. The biography I have doesn't say so, but I suspect maybe his mother had died or something like that. The way the family split up makes it look a little bit like that. In any case, when he reaches 21, he comes to the U.S. in 1830. He's very briefly in New York City, then goes to Cincinnati to live with his relatives, decides Cincinnati isn't adventurous enough, so he comes to Logansport, that hotbed of adventure. And he lived in Logansport from 1837 to 1850. He opened his studio in Lafayette. His family followed him to Lafayette, and he lived there until his death in 1876. He had been, just for a year before he died, he'd gone out to California to settle the estate of one of his brothers. Came back and died 5 days after he got back to Lafayette. So apparently California didn't agree with him. His great-grandson was a gentleman named Cable Gordon Ball, and Mr. Ball's widow, Evelyn Osterman Ball, gave the entirety of his papers to the Tippecanoe Historical Society in 1986. So almost any image you see, the works themselves are, of course, way past copyright. But any photograph you take is copyright anew from the time of the photography, and the Historical Society controls making photographs. So almost any image you see of a George Winter work is courtesy of the Tippecanoe Historical Society. That's where all these things came from. I didn't actually ask them in person, so we'll consider this fair use. Probably his single most famous painting, he was not well known outside Indiana until relatively recently. There was a big study of him in the 1840s, I guess, 1940s, I mean, here in the state, but people in general didn't know him. If they knew of him, they knew of him because of his connection with Frances Slocum, who's the lady here. Frances Slocum was born in Wilkes-Barre, or around where Wilkes-Barre was going to be, in Pennsylvania in 1778. She was abducted by the Lenape, the Delaware, in 1803 when she was 5. Eventually came to live at the Miami, where she was the wife of the chief called Deaf Man, and her Miami name was Moconaqua. So she was living happily down, in that sort of reservoir area south of Logansport there. and told her story to a Colonel Ewing in 1839, the time of the Indian removals. She was afraid she would be separated from Miami and not allowed to stay with her Indian family. She wasn't, but Ewing passed the story on to her family back in Pennsylvania, and two of her brothers came out to see her and to meet her children. And in order to have something to take back to their family in Pennsylvania to say that they'd seen Sis, they asked George Winter to paint her portrait. So, as with a lot of things that Winter did, he tended to take an image and then reuse it several times. So, this I don't think is a painting, probably not even the painting that he sent back, but it's an illustration of the story. When he had made the painting of Frances Slocum herself, her two daughters looked at it. One of them was fascinated, and the other thought it was creepy and turned her back. So I suspect this is representing that rather than the actual image. Yes, ma'am?
There is a great book about Frances Slocum's life. It's called The Red Heart, and it's by James Alexander Thom, Thom, who's an Indiana author.
There you go. And then she was not the only one this happened to. When I was a kid, we all read Light in the Forest by Conrad Richter, which is some of the same sort of thing. So George Winter did paint some people relevant to us. In the center there we have Naswake, commonly known around here as Niswagi, and his two nephews, Iowa and Nesquabuk. And again, we know that that's a composite painting from separate images. Again, we know some of the stories behind these. The Potawatomi conventionally wore turbans. You can see that Iowa is wearing a turban over on the left there. And Naswake wore a turban as well, but Winter thought he would look more dramatic without it. So he took it away from him, and so if you think Niswake looks a little irritated in the painting, sort of like Churchill with his cigar having been snatched away for the Joseph Cartes painting, apparently that's what's going on. Naswake, of course, famously had the reservation on the opposite side of the lake that eventually became Maxinkuckee Village, and the site of Bigley's Orchard is where Naswake's cabin was. So if you're used to driving down that road, you can be familiar with the area, and if you're not used to driving down it, you can see the Society's new historical marker at the corner of the country club that has all this information on it. Also on a historical marker, this person, who is the subject of one of our great Culver legends, this is Pakushak, who killed his father Abanabi to carry out a death sentence imposed by the tribe. The settler's legend was that you could see him paddling his canoe from Long Point over to the other side of the lake where his father was buried. The difficulty is his father was actually buried in Fulton County, so that doesn't... You can believe in ghosts and still think that story is wrong. In any case, Pakushak probably also a nephew of Naswake, because we know that Naswake's sister was one of Abanabi's wives, though possibly not the one that provoked this whole episode with Pakushak. There is a monument, again a historical marker to Pakushak, down on the South Street side of the Masonic Cemetery. So sort of just outside the military memorial section of the cemetery. George Winter also painted Father Petit. Father Petit was the last missionary to the Potawatomi. He had been just ordained a deacon for 6 months or so when the previous missionary died. They wrote to the bishop in Vincennes and said, we need a new priest. And so he ordained Father Petit, put him on horse and sent him north and said, you figure it out when you get there. Unluckily for the Americans, Father Petit had been an attorney in France before he got here, so he was kind of a sand in the wheels of the deportation project. He eventually himself went with the Indians, but, and this is the great part of the story, he had been in Logansport for the last meeting between the bishop and the Potawatomi. They were already on the trail of death. They were in Logansport. The bishop was in Logansport to do confirmations. Father Petit had come down, so Petit said Mass in the morning. In the afternoon, Bishop Brute came to confirm Potawatomi. Of course, Father Petit was there. George Winter was there. So there's a George Winter pencil sketch of Brute preaching to the Indians. So Petit has been pestering the bishop to go along with them to Kansas. And the bishop says, I've only got 3 priests for all of Indiana. I'm not sending you to Kansas. And Petit keeps bashing. Finally, the bishop says, oh, all right, fine. So Petit has to go back to South Bend to get his stuff, and then get a horse and then catch up with them on the way to Kansas. George Winter goes to South Bend as well, and Petit and Winter run into each other at the stagecoach in South Bend, and Winter says, oh, I made a sketch of you, right? This is you, and here's my sketch of the bishop preaching to the confirmands in Logansport. So we know not only that Winter had a face-to-face encounter with Petit, but that Petit saw the drawing of himself. In any case, Winter came here in 1848. This is 4 years after the town of Culver is platted, the town of Uniontown is platted. This is 4 years after the first purchases of land over in Maxentucky on the old reservation. It's 5 years before the first store here in town. He does not label them, mostly. So there are 5 of them all together, I think. This is a view of the lake. We don't quite know from where. I don't know from where, at least. Another view of the lake. Maybe this is sort of a hilly end, not entirely clear. But this one, he says this is a south view of the lake. And you can see, if it's looking south, that's got to be Long Point sticking there. So this means this is someplace between the park and the academy on the Park of the Indian Trails, right? Because he's on high land looking south at Long Point. So in this case, we know exactly where he was, well, relatively exactly where he was standing in order to make this pencil drawing in September of 1848.
John?
Yes, ma'am.
Are these all pencil sketches?
These are all pencil sketches, yeah. His habit was to sketch in pencil and then do a painting later in ink. And he was very commercial, trying to sell, I mean, he was trying to make a living. So he would raffle off his paintings. He was very frequently trying to get people to buy, he wanted to make big dramatic paintings, like the Battle of Tippecanoe. And so he would try to get people to buy, to subscribe to get one of his big paintings, which I don't think ever turned out to be very successful, but that was his schema. Yes, ma'am?
Why is Maxentucky spelled like that?
Because it was phonetic and they didn't have any standard. That's how we heard it, basically. My worst one is Uwabiche, which was a French attempt by English people to write down the French pronunciation Wabash. And as far as I know, the state park has given up on telling people, no, it's just pronounced Wabash. And the state park has gone with saying, oh, sure, call it Wabash, we don't care. But yeah, it's just people not being able to understand what the people were saying.
So who wrote that?
Oh, that's George Winter's original description
Okay,
on the back of the illustration, as far as I know.
so George Winters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Zooming in a little bit more on that view.
Yeah.
Is it north of the Vonnegut property? Is it closer to where the rowing center is? Like
Oh, here, no, this is someplace, if you were standing at the beach lodge, you'd be roughly where that is.
Okay, so more there.
Yeah, because it's on high ground looking south, and if you see the Long Point come out that far, I'm guessing it's someplace in that neck of the
Okay,
woods.
thank you.
Yeah, don't quote me as a geographer. but I think
Best
that's
guess
it.
is good.
Our next character is Henry Shaw Wiley, an absolutely extraordinary life. He is, this is a view of Maplewood, New Jersey, as it says down there in the corner. He was born in the north of England, in the sort of in the Lake District in Cumbria. He lived in the south of England. He lived in India before he came to the United States, so sort of the long way around the globe. He lived in Florida and New Jersey, and for some reason he lived in Culver. I don't know. He made a lot of other drawings. He wrote books about India, about St. Augustine, Florida. And he did a lot, or several of these panoramic views. 2 of them are digitized by the Library of Congress, both of them about New Jersey. As I say, this one from Maplewood and another one of Arlington, New Jersey. So how do we know he was in Culver? Well, thanks to Jeff, there are 2 copies, I guess, 2, of the Maxentucky Chatterer. This very elaborately gotten up local paper. It was on nicer paper than the Citizen would have been, whatever the predecessor of the Citizen was. It was heavily illustrated. And the fact that it's heavily illustrated lets us note that the Wiley who was publishing it, there's his signature right there, magnified, is clearly the same Wiley as the one who did the thing from Maplewood. So our Maxon County Chatterer guy, whatever he was doing here in 1901, went on to New Jersey, or went on to sketch New Jersey, at least. And by the way, that's connected with our Oprah giveaway here. While they last, this lovely version of his Eagle bird's eye view, and all these little ads that were originally in the Chatterer around the outside edge. So don't leave without one as long as they're all there. That's just the same thing, obviously. Next, just because it's something pretty that a lot of us have in our houses, Everman and Clark, the Survey of the Lake from 1900, finally published in 1920s. It has lots of lovely plates in it of fish. The one thing we know is that they borrowed those. They say in one of the notes that the colored plates of 33 species of fishes were indebted to Dr. Stephen A. Forbes, director of the Illinois State Natural History Survey, though it doesn't mean that Dr. Forbes drew them himself, of course. But they thought they had discovered a unique species of darter, the Maxon cocky darter. I gather that current biologists aren't so persuaded. But in any case, since it was unique, that suggests that they must have had the drawing made themselves. Again, it's not entirely clear that either Everman or Clark himself sat down and drew that, though they might very well have, but at least it's a unique illustration specifically of a local thing in their book. Frederick Pollock, our next fellow, is associated with art from the Academy, as I'll show you in a minute. He was a trained engraver, though he actually started working as a telephone operator, which he did for a number of years before he finally got a job with the Indiana Electrotype Company in 1910, 1911. He did a lot of teaching of art in the Indianapolis area. He taught at IU. He was the head of the art department at Arsenal Tech in Indianapolis from 1919 into the 1930s. He worked as a map maker, did illustrations for most of the major New York magazines, Ladies' Home Journal, Esquire, Women's Home Companion, and so on. And was also part of the Brown County art thing, and in fact died in Brown County in 1957. So the Academy asked him to do some illustrations for the 1930 roll call. These are two of them. We have the roll call open over there. The particularly cool thing was that if you got the 1930 roll call, you not only got his printed illustrations in a section at the front of the book, but each roll call actually came with an actual engraving rather than a print of an engraving, if you see what I mean. Tipped in, as they say in the book trade. So as it happens, the one I borrowed from Jeff, the engraving had come loose, so it's lying in front of the roll call. You can see that each person got one of the black and whites as well as the lovely illustrations of the buildings. We'll see another Academy illustrator in a minute or two. Then there's this guy. This is Warner Williams, a familiar character from around town, certainly from my childhood. His third son was exactly my age, is exactly my age, so we were running around town a lot together as kids, and I was in and out of the Williams household probably more than either they or my parents would have been happy with. Mr. Williams was, certainly by his later years, firmly anti-commercial, and so you'll remember that he drove a Ford van with a WW insignia on the front rather than a VW insignia on the front. This is an early piece by Mr. Williams. He was a sculptor, as I probably should have said. This 1942, a piece illustrating Chief Medicine Wood from the Woodcraft Camp, a gentleman named Ernest Benedict, who actually was a chief, somewhat surprisingly, the way the words get thrown around in Woodcraft Camp. But he was a Mohawk chief, lived to 2011, so there you see him at a much later age than at the time when Mr. Williams portrayed him. This was just after Williams had come to work at the Academy. He was born In 1903, went to Berea College in Kentucky, a lot of art schools and so on. He had a summer exhibit in the Legion in 1930. So he was kind of a regional character out of Chicago at that time. In one year in the 30s, he took his show on the road with his oldest son, Carol. So he'd go to a local place and give a lecture about sculpture, pick someone out of the audience and make a bas-relief of them while they were sitting there. And then send one, to go home and clean it up and send one to them. But so his gimmick was that he worked fast. And in fact, if you look over his biography, the range of things he made, particularly after he came to the Academy and stopped competing in prize things, but there's a page and a half of sculptures of Newt Rockne or Mother Cabrini or all sorts of anybody vaguely related to the Midwest who wanted a plaque or a sculpture of great-grandma turned to Warner Williams to get one of them. Here he is, I said he was from Henderson, Kentucky. So Henderson, Kentucky asked him, could you do a bust of Colonel Henderson, the original patron of Henderson, Kentucky? They wanted it big. So there's Mr. Williams with a giant bust of Colonel Henderson. Obviously posing to look very much like he's just carved that this second. Lots of things by Mr. Williams around the Academy and, for that matter, around town. If you go by the fire department, there's a sign commemorating Don Meitzel, longtime fire chief, on the right-hand side of the door, very clearly in Mr. Williams's lettering. I guess I couldn't say handwriting since it's clay pushed onto things, but you'll recognize it as a Warner Williams piece immediately. This piece commemorating the anniversary of the Woodcraft Camp, the processional cross in the Academy Chapel, commemorations of Colonel Mather and Colonel Payson around campus. Once you start looking, you see the Williams pieces all over the campus and some places even in town. In 1966, he was called upon to make the state commemorative medal for the sesquicentennial, and this exists in two versions. This one, which I got this isn't mine, but I have one just like that I got as a kid in 1966 because it was cool to have a medal, much less one that was made by David and Earl and Sylvia's dad. And then a matching one for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So if you look at our little collection over there, the one that's under the magnifying glass is the Motor Speedway one, not the generic one. But he did a lot of medals too, in addition to his other bits and pieces. Yes, ma'am.
Is that a buffalo?
That is a buffalo. If I can go back to it.
I guess we forget that we have buffalo here.
Well, we did. That's the state seal. So the buffalo is leaving. He was the left-hand side is he executed, but he's not responsible for that design. That's just that's the Great Seal of the state of Indiana. But the right-hand side is his design from scratch.
Where was his foundry? Where were these pre-produced?
I don't know where they had them struck.
Okay.
You probably find out without much trouble, but some bronze medallion striking company that I don't know where it was. He was also an astronomer. He built, you can see the WW logo again on one of those. He built these telescopes in 1951. Scientific American covered him as a telescope maker. So his talent for his interest in things other than specifically art shows up as well. I forgot when I was talking about medallions. One of the medals he made was for the crew team of 1968. And I don't have that medal, but if you go over and look at the crew building, the White Breeze Rowing Center, the huge plaster eagle, carved eagle on the top is a copy of the 1968 rowing medal that Warner Williams designed. So you can see him at a large scale if you look at the rowing center. This is the inside and outside of his geodesic dome studio down on White Street. And in fact, you can see lots of the projects he was working on. I think this is his monumental head, Mr. Dickerson, that's in the mess hall at this point. This is a telescope. and behind it is the model for the Academy processional cross. So lots of familiar bits and pieces lying around the office, if I could put it that way. And in fact, this is the Speedway medal we were just talking about. In later life, he went for simplicity and began working on these very simple animal figures. There are a lot of those around town. We have one over here. Many of you may have one at home. If you go upstairs in the library, I think there are 6 or 8 of them in the periodical room upstairs, so you can see a range of the animal figures there. Oh yeah.
Were they reproduced?
Yeah, these are so reproduced by him, as far as I know. I don't think he had no commercial. In fact, that's what he's doing on the left there, is pulling out one of the doves. So yeah, he was curiously uninterested in commercial success. So he made these, sold them off happily or gave them away happily. But I don't think he ever paid a company to to run off a series of them, so far as I know. And he could be cantankerous, but he wasn't particularly in it for the money. He was cantankerous for free, And I just, when I get this inside of the studio, I wanted to at least mention Jean Williams as well, herself an artist and particularly a calligrapher. If you got something that had your name written on it nicely from the Academy, the odds were pretty high that Jean Williams had been the one who made it. We've got a little bit of her stuff there. She became interested in this art of fine cutting of paper. So you see some snowflakes, you can see them from here, but she did a bunch of designs with snowflakes. And she was also on the President Town Council, so very involved in local affairs. The next character is Charles Overall, and we're going to go back now to art at the Academy. This scene is one that I would bet almost all of you have actually seen, though it's dated 1885. This is Randolph Street Station, Millennium Station, right? So it's looking south along Michigan Avenue, right? This is all, well, the art museum is down there someplace, and you're getting your Franco mints over there. But this is a lithograph, so this is something printed from a stone, and it's signed Charles Overall. The fact that it's dated confuses people. In fact, I saw one piece of Charles Overall art being sold and listed with his name 19th/20th centuries. Would imply he lived for a while. In fact, Charles Overall was a perfectly ordinary St. Louis citizen, not gifted with extraordinary life as far as I know, but he liked to make copies of things. So one of his regular things to do was to copy 19th century city lithographs. So he included the original date. He wasn't trying to fool anybody. As I say, he put his name on them, so they weren't fakes in that sense. But people were fooled anyway. And so there are some overall lithographs that you can buy where the art dealer thinks he's selling you something from 1865, but in fact it's just Charles Overall duplicating his original work. I got help for this from the Missouri Historical Society. There was an article about Overall in the St. Louis Globe-Democrat, and that's where this photograph of him in his studio comes from. It was funny, I wrote to the guy in St. Louis and I said, I'm having trouble finding out anything about Charles Overall because there's some 19th century guy who has the same name and has a lot of design, and we finally figured out that it was actually just the same person in both cases. So I was originally just as confused as the art dealers were. In any case, Overall was contracted, he was, as I say, lived in St. Louis, would have been known to people like the Culvers and their friends because he did a lot of portraits. So the sort of people who live in Ladue, Missouri and have their portrait done would have had Charles Overall do it, and so the Culvers would have known him that way. In any case, he does a set of sketches of buildings at the Academy after the war, including the Naval Building, post-war development. And these were widely reprinted both in groups, and then occasionally you'll see all of them together within a maroon printed frame, and people have that collage, or that collage, I guess, I mean, of all of the overall designs together. So Charles Overall from St. Louis does those. Esther Miller, I'm moving at people that most of us knew well. Mrs. Powers, as she was when I was a little kid, her son Mike was the same age as David Williams and me. So again, people I knew as grown-ups when I was a little kid. Prolific watercolorist. We have a bunch of her stuff on that table just closest to me. She was born actually in Ohio in, I guess in 1929. She studied at the Kansas City Art Institute and later at IUSB. She moved here with her father, Dr. Powers, one of my doctors when I was a little kid, a gentleman of fantastic memory. I saw him talking with some of my cousins, of course, admittedly nearly everyone is my cousin, but some of my Prosser cousins outside Cafe Max several years ago. And he remembered things about our childhood that we didn't particularly need to have discussed in front of Cafe Max on the street. In any case, moved here in 1953. Of course, they had children. Their marriage eventually ended in divorce, and she went into realty and appraising. There was a second marriage to Mr. Wampler. She was involved in local politics as well. She was the first woman to be the president of the Culver Town Council, as far as I know. And in 1989, she started the Painter and Poet Gallery with her third husband, Ward Miller. I remember that he would write poems, and they were frequently available in pairs. This is a painting which the Society owns. I should have said, I'm sure she's a member of the Society. I don't know where that is. It looks to me like a building I've seen, yes.
I think it's the house across from the country club, back in the corner.
Ah!
It sure looks like that. That came to mind when I saw it, because I drive down that road from time to time.
Sure.
The Whitney House. The Whitney House. That would be my guess.
Yeah, well, that's perfect. Yeah,
Is
okay.
that one Yes.
The stepmother's house.
Yeah, right on 18B.
Oh, there you go.
No,
It is not that?
no,
Not that one.
this is up at the golf course.
Well, maybe she succeeded in making your house that looks like everybody's house. In any case, a lot more of her stuff over there as well.
Yeah, it's the Whitney House, I'm sure.
Isn't.
Yeah.
Also a member of the Society, Barbara Meeker. This is a picture from Baroque, the Baroque General Store. The original is over there as well. She was born in Peru, as I learned to say from my friends, my family who lived down that way. She graduated from DePaul, taught art in Hammond until 1957. And then again, she and her husband started a business over in the Calumet area someplace. I think it would be in Hammond. She taught at Purdue until 1966. No, she started in 1966. She taught to 1986. She was a national Easter seal painter. They used to sell Easter seals with lilies on them, and she was one of the lily painters for 1993. Got a lot of other accolades, but was a regular here. She's a member of the Yacht Club, the Antiquarian Society, and did a lot of paintings of things around town, including many folks probably have a better print of it than this, but as part of the fundraising for the Lions Club moving to the depot, she did this sketch of the depot, which was then given as a reward for people making a contribution to the depot renewal. So a specific contribution to our local historical projects as well. I did a lot of, as near as I can tell, a lot of things that were charity oriented. There was a project to provide art supplies and art training for kids with developmental disabilities that she was involved in. So lots of things like that over in the area up in that corner of the state. Charlie Duff, many of us remember, including members of his family, are here. And I apologize for getting this wrong, but he was born in Charleston, West Virginia in 1932. And if I remember correctly, grew up on his grandfather's farm.
They went there in the summers.
Ah, there you He graduated from high school at 16. Did a bachelor's degree in geology and German from the University of Miami in Florida, and then a master's degree in printmaking and painting. Then the bits that I know because I've been told that I had no idea when I was younger. He was a fighter pilot during the Korean War, stationed in England. Studied at the Edinburgh College of Art where he met Anne, and they moved back here to New York City and then down to Washington. Is that?
Well, I arrived in Miami, Florida, from Scotland in July wearing a light wool coat. Then we went to Pratt in Brooklyn, and then lived in Long Island, back to Brooklyn, then to Maryland, and each state we had a child. Susanna is the Maryland child. Jeremy was the Virginia swat, and I'm still here in Indiana.
There you
No time.
And he taught at the Academy for 20 years, and also over at Ancilla for nearly a decade. Anne pointed out to me yesterday that his original medium was largely engraving.
No, etching.
Etching, I didn't say etching, yes, it's completely the opposite thing, yes.
Well, sort of. He used acids for the plates, we worked with the acid, as he used the lines, and subsequently he had no fingerprint. Because he kept bringing his fingers in.
So
Well, he did.
his later career as a bank robber, it's entirely related. Probably the painting you will most recognize is the one that Anne has kindly loaned us the original of, this painting of Sunday Afternoon. But she also explained to me that it's a visual reference. There's an allusion there. This earlier painting, Early Sunday Morning by Edward Hopper of 7th Avenue in New York, this is Sunday Afternoon, not on 7th Avenue and not in New York.
He loved Hopper's work.
Yeah.
As many of the people do.
And also pointed out, this is just parenthetical, but that if you look at a print, we do have one over here, but if you look at a print, and many of us have them, of Sunday Afternoon, it will look brighter than the original. As time goes by, the paintings tend to age and get darker. So if you have a print, you'll see there's a print in the Captain Max, for instance.
And it's an egg tempera. The egg yolk is the binding agent rather than, say, linseed oil for a lot of things.
So it will look, if that looks darker, it's because it is. My favorite point to make about it, and this is me being a historian for a second, is that, so there were 3 buildings here, right? The old restaurant, later the appliance store, and then, let's see, there was Rector's Pharmacy, and there was the little grocery store, right? Brenner's grocery store. All 3 of those are in that one empty lot across the street. So remember how small buildings were. One of my acquaintances in Plymouth is an architect who says that he thinks part of the genius of American small towns was having narrow, deep stores, which allowed you to have a lot of variety in one block, and there was housing upstairs. So you had people living downtown who would shop downtown, and lots of room going that way, but the sort of mall effect of lots of little storefronts along the street.
I'd like to add that I turned into Superman in that phone booth.
In that very phone booth.
That call for sale.
There's a famous picture of a parade going by that corner when it was still the Snyder's Restaurant. And Vicki Helber swears to God I'm in that parade. And if I was in a pram. I could not possibly be in any things you see and arguments you have in small towns. I do also have some things of Anne's. She's kindly given us a couple of watercolor studies of flowers over there, and an unpublished children's, or a just published for family children's book about If I Had an Elephant. She's also illustrated these other books, one co-authored with Dana Muir, and 2 that she wrote herself. So you can congratulate the author and see some of her art over there. Looks fine to me. This lady, J.L. Monroe, she's a sort of in the Grandma Moses train of things. She's a self-taught folk art painter. She's been working for, I don't know, I guess 4 years or so. Old New England family. I got married right out of high school. Never studied art particularly. This is all from her published bio. I don't have secret information about her quaint life after high school. But according to herself, she went straight into being a mom. This is Cape Cod. Here's the Hudson River. And this is Lake Maxinkuckee. There you go. And again, some of you may have copies of this. This was commissioned by John Cleveland, who was one of the founding members of the Historical Society. He was the publisher of The Citizen from 1961 to 68, having taken that over from his father, Chester Cleveland, who I think purchased the paper in 53, something like that. So it's got all the things you'd expect, and you can pick out things that you identify, whether that's the Ledbetter or the Fowler, but all the little things we expect to see. It is looking east. If you're used to seeing pictures painted looking north, this map's looking east. What's interesting about it, I think, in particular, is that, thanks to Mr. Cleveland, we have a rough draft as well. You can see it over there. But this is her rough draft with his inserted remark, Academy, over in this corner. Make this flag bigger and so on. So you can see what she originally proposed to do and what he suggested he would rather see. So the customer is always right. And this is a little complicated. This starts off with a cartoon cover from the New Yorker from 1976 by Saul Steinberg, and the title is actually A View of the World from 9th Avenue, looking west out of New York. That was quickly ripped off by this poster, 1980, by Harvey Hunter, which is called New York, A View of the World, and it is looking south from Central Park. So looking west from 9th Avenue, looking south from Central Park, but clearly meant to look the same. You can see the typeface. It's clearly meant to rip off the original. So then, William G. Roth, Academy alumnus and faculty member, and his wife Susan said, well, why should Culver be left out? And contacted Deborah Szymanski, who I think lives over, again, in the Calumet area someplace, I think she's in Chesterton, to do a version that shows Lake Maxinkuckee. So we have Culver, A View of the World. This is looking north, by the way. So we've had looking west, looking south. Now we're looking north with this picture of Culver as a look in the eyes of the New Yorker. I guess that's probably not quite how the New Yorker would think about us, but anyway. And finally, this is a painting by Ernest Short, whom I put in out of her historical order. It says in her obituaries that she that she was born in 1909. I'm almost sure she was born in 1902. Her immigration papers and her naturalization papers both say 1902, and that would make more sense. She studied the Bauhaus, which ran from 1919 to 1923, so she would have been quite young to be an art student. She sailed to New York alone, arriving here on the 15th of July of 1923, and was married the next day to a gentleman named Albert Lowe. So again, if she was born in 1909, getting married in 1923 would be a little improbable. She and Mr. Lowe were divorced sometime by 1940. She was naturalized in 1945. In 1946, married a Coast Guard officer candidate, school instructor named Melville Short, and then in 1954 they came here. So this is one of her watercolors. I remember seeing others when I was a kid, though this is the only one I could find online. I put her out of her historical order to stand not just for herself, but for all of the artists that I know that I've left out in the course of doing all this. I haven't talked about Colonel Payson as a photographer, for instance. He was an award-winning amateur photographer. Phyllis Helber, Ruth Hubel, a lot of other faculty wife names were painters. artillery sculptors that I don't even know about. So lots of art that happened that I haven't touched on, but I wanted to at least make the gesture of acknowledging that there's a lot of people out there besides the ones that I got to in my little 45 minutes. So again, let me remind you, we are eager to have new members. There is a blank form available from James, or you can use the QR code if you're that sort of a person. Don't forget to pick up a copy of Wiley's drawing to take home for your very own. I feel like, is it Oprah that's always saying, you get a map and you get a... And we invite you to be back right here on July 12th for Drama by the Lake, presented by Jeff and by Dan Adams, talking about, well, the history of performing arts here in Culver, going back to the beginning of the 20th century. Thank you all. Yes, sir.
A question about the murals in the post office.
Yeah, I didn't even think about including those.
Yeah, those are pretty special, I think.
They are pretty special. She did, of course, now, this is off the top of my head since I don't have notes. They were a Roosevelt-era alphabet soup project. The lady who did them did, I think, 2 or 3 others. Her husband was also an artist and did some. The title of it is, I think, Bringing the Mail to Coal, if I remember correctly.
Her name was Mayer, M-A-Y-E-R.
Thank you.
This is not a sales pitch, but I will just say for those who are interested, I think we're the only place around the Academy Museum where you can buy prints of the View of the World. And we also have a number of the Academy CDs that Esther Miller did. And I don't think there's any place else right now selling them. So, I mean, I'm not trying to sell anything, but if you see this and want to buy them, that's something we have
You got
at the museum.
Jeff, did Esther do one of the Culver Inn that's over there?
That's Barbara Meeker.
Oh,
Yeah, and we don't think we sell them anymore. I
Yeah.
think we have too few. I also will put a plug in for the campus gallery, beautiful, crisp gallery. I'm assuming everybody in this room knows about it, has been there, but,
How do you get in it?
well, it does have open hours.
Funny you should ask.
I think it's open this summer for some hours.
All right.
With registration today, I bet it's open.
You're probably
It is
right.
not. No, it is not today. The buildings are closed until, it'll be open Monday.
When summer camp starts. Okay.
Yes.
And it's in C building, is that what it's called, the restaurant?
Yeah, the former science building, but it's conveniently located right on Academy Road, yeah. So.
But just so you're aware, the galleries are actually under construction. We had some brand new walls put in, so, the actual galleries are now open, but the hallways and upstairs have exhibits in them, and those are open. Hope to have the gallery hung and ready for public view by summer camp, homecoming weekend.
And Wes Fall, who's managing our gallery.
I suppose this isn't a plug, but if anyone's interested in a Charles Duff print of a Sunday afternoon or at the Beaver Pond, please see my mother.
There you go. Definitely done, definitely done. Yes, sir.
Would a project of reproducing that mural in the post office be something of interest?
Might be. I
Just of the whole wall, it looks pretty special.
Yeah.
It's neat.
and I have no idea who,
Who could do that?
yeah, I
I'll get
assume.
my camera out and we'll do something.
Yeah. Presumably it's, I mean, generally speaking, federal publications are not copyright, so my guess is that it's probably not copyright, but I'm not sure.
Be my annuity.
There you go. Anything else? Well, thank you, and I invite you to have a look at these things.
Right here, it's really city.
That they did that, just that way. I did hear that. My grandfather's.
I'm sorry.
So he likes
Yeah, we're like a small little cottage there.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
It's not too good, but she doesn't really. Yeah, I think she did.